Welcome to Five Questions, a show where we unpack some of the big issues of the day related to the Middle East, brought to you by Arab Center, Washington, D.C. My name is Khalil Jahshan, and I would like to welcome all of you to this episode focusing on Gaza today. Our special guest today is Brian Barber, and the name of his book is No Way But Forward. And Brian has spent actually many years, if I'm not mistaken, more than a quarter of a century actually
30,
back and forth.
30 years now.
30 years back and forth to Gaza, and knows Gaza probably better than anybody else that I know, definitely better than most of us. And we will be discussing today the content of his book and the situation in Gaza in general. Let me begin with a couple of introductory remarks. I'm reminded every time I do a program on Gaza, I'm reminded of a good friend, the late Faiz Abu Rahmi, who in the 1990s was a prominent figure, political figure in Gaza. As a matter of fact, he headed the Gaza Bar Association at least 2 or 3 times, and he became also Attorney General of the Palestine government when it was headed by Yasser Arafat and based in Gaza. I was involved in arranging a couple of visits for Palestinian leaders from the West Bank and Gaza, including Faiz Abu Rahmi, in my days at the National Association of Arab Americans, and used to accompany them sometimes to these meetings. Faiz intrigued me because every time he talked about Gaza, he used to begin his conversation by telling American officials, and I'm talking here about White House and top people in Congress and the Secretary of State, he would always say, "Welcome to planet Gaza," and then begin the conversation. Frankly, the history of the Gaza Strip, particularly since 1948, has definitely made it a unique place, a virtually unmatched planet, if you will, to use his terminology. When you look at the intensity, particularly, and the duration of the Palestinian dispersion, historically displacement, recurrent destruction, the current starvation, all that stuff that the population of Gaza had to endure. And you look, on the other hand, the other side of the coin, the courage, the hope, the perseverance, the survival they managed to display through 8 decades of a bloody conflict, which is honestly, conveyed in a realistic way in your work, in your book. One has to basically focus on how did these people make it? How did they survive? Where did that strength come from? Let me tell you a little bit for those who do not know Brian. Brian is an author, a psychologist, an international security fellow. He's been doing research on family, on children in conflict zones, both dealing with youth and, if you will, the political side of these conflicts for many years. And he taught at University of Tennessee for a while. He also served as a program fellow at several think tanks and institutions, research institutions here in the United States, and wrote this very interesting book, No Way But Forward. Kind of a provocative title, if you don't mind me saying that. And it's a unique book in a sense that it's not like your normal run-of-the-mill discussion of a third world conflict, as much as a personal kind of delving into the lives of individuals, known individuals in Gaza. So let's begin with that. In those 3 decades that you basically spent dealing with Gaza and its people, what is life really, based on that experience? What is life under siege in Gaza feel like for those of us who live outside?
Well, surprisingly, I'd say it looks more normal than you'd think it would. Part of the advantage of the book, in which I am narrating the stories of these 3 characters, I want to make clear that I'm I'm not a Palestinian, and I would never write of my own describing Palestinians. Rather, these are life stories of three men who I met just after the first Intifada when they were in their early 20s, and I followed them ever since and asked them to tell me the main moments of their lives, main decision points.
How did you pick the three? I mean, random?
Well, we call it kind of snowball sampling in the jargon. I can say Hammam, who I begin the book with, I picked him because his was the first family in Gaza that allowed me to come live with them for extended periods. Right, I had been trained as a quantitative survey researcher.
Right.
But when our research team made our first findings in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, we encountered findings that we just could not explain on the face of them. Namely, how did this generation of stone throwers fare during 6 years of nearly daily conflict? And our theories then, and still unfortunately, would tell us that any young person, even adult, who experiences violent episodes is at risk for psychological and emotional disturbance. Mm-hmm. And so when I went, I fully expected I'd encounter a generation of young people who were severely disturbed, having been 6 years.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by your focus on young people because, after all, Gaza is what, 70% young people, quote unquote, under 30?
And it always was heavily weighted that way, right? And so I made the decision after we did our first findings that I needed to understand better, and that meant I needed to become more of an anthropologist than a psychologist. So I don't know if you would have known him, but Abu Ali Hellis was the head of the UNRWA education system in Gaza at the time. And he became my very close friend and confidant. And I asked him once, I said, I have this crazy idea. I want to come live in Gaza and live with refugee camp families. And could you find me a family? He thought the idea was fine, and 3 days later he called back and said, I've got your family. And it was the Al-Fakawi family. Hammam's the oldest son.
I understand you have a picture?
Yes, thank you. This is Hammam back in 1996 when I first met him in his refugee camp home in Khan Yunis.
Typical young Gazan.
Yeah. He's in his pajamas. One thing
which is very common in the afternoon in Gaza.
That's what I discovered, that once you're home, you put the pajamas on. So they bought me a pair, and we all hung out in our
relaxation time,
So that's how I met Hammam. When I was staying with Hammam in that same first month, I think this was June 96, a knock came at the door, the big iron door outside of the house, and one of Hammam's brothers, I think it was Wasim perhaps, came and said, hey, there's someone for you at the door, or the gate. And I said, that's not possible. I don't know anyone in Gaza. This was literally my first stay there. And he said, he's for you. So I went out, and outside was Khalil, Abu Shamala. He came saying that his friend Dick Doughty, an American who had authored a book about Gaza, and whom I had briefly contacted before I went, he said Dick sent him. He's to take care of me.
Oh, wow. That's effective networking.
Yeah. So we became then fast friends. I also stayed at Khalil's house and kept in touch with him. Hussam III, I was referred to. I was invited to his home in Nuseirat to interview him. And I'll never forget that first interview. It was, this guy is one very bright individual, and he spoke with a polish to his English that you'd think he would have memorized a dictionary.
Wow.
He's now associate dean of one of Gaza's colleges, and has his PhD, as Jahshan.
Yeah.
Ma'am.
Brian, what you did was different from most people who have been, let's say, to Gaza or to any conflict area and met people. Usually they just interviewed them and left. But your book is unbelievable, a long record of a continued relationship with these three and their families. I mean, you followed them for more than 2 decades.
Yeah. Right, and that was my purpose. It was because that's what I needed to do in order to understand the culture. I'm from Los Angeles, California, and never thought of living in a refugee camp before. But we were discovering so much uniqueness about this people that I just needed to understand better. So a single interview just would not have cut it. So I went back every year after 1996, every year, with few exceptions, for weeks or months per year.
Let me ask you this. You have delved, as you just stated, not just into the history, sociology, and psychology of the local population, but even the anthropology. In a way, you had to. But based on that experience, in your judgment, what made Gazans or Gaza a survivalist culture? I mean, they have survived so many things over the past 50 years, if not more, probably going back to the beginning of the conflict in 1948. And these young people, I mean, based on that, I mean, what did you feel motivated them to do what they are doing in their daily lives and to survive?
Right. First, I'd answer it at the broader level. These are Palestinians, and Palestinians have endured all of what you've just described for all of these decades. And so, I mean, Gazans are unique to the extent that they are they're on a different planet, as your friend said, meaning, in my mind, a separate space. Mm-hmm. So even in 1995, when I first went, people were not going to Gaza. My research team members said, no, we're not going to Gaza. The Israeli press had already labeled it a hellhole full of hornets. And even my friends, like my friends in Jerusalem and the West Bank, hadn't been to Gaza for a decade or more. And so the oddest thing for me was coming back to the West Bank in Jerusalem and having to ask her questions about, well, how's Gaza? As if I'm to be the interpreter of Gaza. So it was off to the side, kind of a stepchild almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as you know, many of the political movements of Palestine began in Gaza, and of course the Intifada began there. And so one could say they had a more intense dose of the occupation's influence. But generally, Palestinians, in my view, survive out of a sense of pride and dignity. I mean, people can suffer from a lot of things in life, mass casualties, all sorts of events, but when you try to dehumanize them, tell them they aren't people or they aren't
human beings,
can't call themselves by this, the human response, at least in this case, has been, well, to hell with you, and we'll show you that we can. And so it's a matter of deep pride and this drive to find basic rights.
And holding on to their dignity in a way.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, you use the word dehumanization. I remember in my early interviews with Hussam about his Intifada days, him talking about soldiers screaming at them that they're not human beings. And of course, we hear it from Israeli leaders.
Every day.
Currently. Right. So it is that a nationalist drive to be a people, to be worthy people, that keep people going. And there are other factors, I think I've understood that contribute to that. One I want to say is the focus on education. few people know that the literacy rates in Palestine, including Gaza, are always over 95, sometimes 98. So a very intelligent people. But it's the drive for education that keeps them moving, right? In my view, there are at least four things that make up a good Palestinian from their point of view. This is not my evaluation, but when they describe a good person, male or female, it's a person who cares for family, parents, and then your spouse and your children when you have them. Education. You get the highest level of education you possibly can. And those who don't get it are those who just can't afford to get it. Every child, every person wants to be educated.
So what you're saying is education and educational institutions kind of filled some of the gaps created by this protracted conflict, protracted aggression against Gaza, and targeting of educational institutions. It seems to me that the targeting of educational institution is not haphazard.
No. No, because the Israeli soldiers know this precisely. When I interviewed Hussam after the Intifada, and I asked him to reflect back on those 6 years, I asked him, what did you lose or miss the most from those years? And, one might expect him to say, well, it was the beatings in prison and it was this or that. His answer was like this, delay in my education.
Yeah.
That hurt him more than anything else. And
so essentially the war the past 2 years has put a stop totally to academic careers of a society that probably 60%, 50 to 60% of it is our students.
Right, but I'd say we would think that it put a stop to it, and we know that it's put a stop to the physical structure of education, because all universities and most schools have been destroyed. But Palestinians are remarkably resourceful, and in Gaza, there are 12 children from these fathers and mothers, and all of them are continuing their education online now. In fact, Hammam's second son, Mido, is preparing for Tawjihi.
Wow, the high school required test.
Yeah, the college qualifying exam that you take, and he's studying for it online. And
without a school building?
Without a school building. And I asked, well, where is he going to take the exam? And Hammam said, we don't know yet.
You're still in touch with these friends, right?
Even today.
Could you tell us about that? I mean, what did you hear today?
I hear from them weekly, multiple times a week, and I won't be surprised to say that they're just really suffering horribly. These are proud men, 2 of them with PhDs, all of them with remarkable families, and they have been pushed to the level where they have to talk about the level of hunger they're having, how much they didn't eat, how many hours they spent. Well, for all 3 of them, every waking hour is spent looking for food and water. And then sometimes they have to walk miles and miles to find even the little bit.
Yeah.
And so I hear a lot of those things from them. Today, Khalil wrote me a letter that he'd written to Donald Trump. President Donald Trump, from Gaza, from amidst genocide, hunger, and destruction, I speak to you, perhaps expressing the voice of a majority of Palestinians in Gaza. We are all enduring the same catastrophe, the same suffering. We have reached a point where we can no longer understand why all of this continues, why death, destruction, hunger, fear, and pain do not stop. We are human beings with dreams and aspirations who long to live in safety and peace. We appeal to you because it seems that there is no one left who can stop this nightmare. You may be the only one who can end it and open political paths that might bring an end to this conflict. We implore you to say a word that history will remember, that the world will record, and that future generations will never forget. Make the decision to stop all of this, because no one remains who can halt the death except you. Khalil E, Gaza from the heart of genocide.
Wow. Well, I hope the president gets the letter somehow and feels compelled to answer, although one finds it very difficult for those of us who have been following the political aspect of this conflict, find it very difficult to be optimistic about a positive response, even though, I mean, the misery these people are going through is quite clear. Let me move forward a little bit to more recent current events, if you will, specific ones. A lot has been said about October 7, 2023. For somebody like you who is well versed into the history and the politics of Gaza, I'm sure you resent as much as I do the implication as if history in Gaza started on October 7, 2023. I'm sure you share with me the fact that the events of 2023 did change, if you will, the trajectory of regional politics and the narratives that people hold on all sides, and has impacted the region probably more deeply than major wars that preceded it. Could you tell us how Gazans see the events of 2023, October 7 and October 27, when Israel invaded Gaza?
That's an impossible question to answer, really, because the answer depends on the day, even the time of day you're asking someone. As the suffering magnifies and becomes nearly unbearable, people respond in different ways. So I've heard my people, these and others, say that they don't support the brutality of Hamas's regime or what they did on that day. But more often, I don't hear them complain about that, but rather talk about the need to move forward and the need to support efforts to bring them liberation and freedom. There are sometimes supportive of Hamas, there are sometimes angry at Hamas. It just goes up and down. I think the general layout is that any Palestinian, and certainly Gazan, would support anyone who would fight for their rights. And dignity and liberation. As to the particular methods that group might use, that's a secondary point.
Right. In terms of what followed October, particularly 27, after Israel moved into Gaza and declared this rather, I don't find better terminology than calling it a war of vengeance, that quickly deteriorated into a form of genocide. And it's universally these days acknowledged by genocide experts, including Israelis and Jews worldwide, are beginning to admit that that's what it is. And when I look today at the results of that war of vengeance, first of all, targeting people. It's not just targeting Hamas, or it's not even targeting Hamas. It's targeting these people to punish Hamas. And I look at the results, when I see that as of today, more than 63,000 people have died in Gaza, more than 150,000 have been wounded and maimed for life. And I noticed that 80% at least of these people are civilians. Like this, they have no association, if you will, with the military or with the military component of Hamas. Yet at the same time, I keep hearing Israeli leaders, including people who are in the government, targeting again the civilian population just outright, without any hesitation. I mean, I personally grew up my first 21 years in Israel as an Israeli citizen, a Palestinian Israeli citizen. And frankly, I used to sense a sense of shame on the part of Israeli leadership of old at the time, that somehow I knew they hated us, but they did not spill it out in a profane manner the way we hear it today. So when I hear Major General Aharon Haliva, the former head of Israeli military intelligence, talking about what is happening in Gaza, the 63,000, is a necessary lesson to future generations, the children of these people you met. And for him to say that Palestinians need, and I'm quoting him, a Nakba every now and then to learn their lesson. Now, based on your intimate knowledge of Gaza, are these threats registering? What type of response is it soliciting psychologically from these people?
You know, Gazans, Palestinians in general, they're expert at this. I mean, this, as you said, history didn't start on October 7, 2023, and so this is not in any stretch their first experience with Israelis' brutality. Obviously, it's a million times worse than before, but they're fighters, and they will continue. They'll go forward to until they get a place of dignity, independence, self-determination, and so forth. One thing I wanted to add to your description about the punitiveness and the vengefulness of this genocide is that it's also essentially the fulfillment of the basic Zionist ideology, right? And Zionism as a political ideology has as its core component the notion that that land belongs to Jews and it should have as few non-Jews as possible. Dispossession
was an inherent concept.
Yeah. So I think this is very much the fulfillment of the hardline Zionists who want to take advantage of this opportunity to cleanse the place, to fulfill the promises and vision of Zionism. Certainly Netanyahu, who learned this from his father, apparently, who was an arch Zionist.
So when President Trump says, in terms of U.S. policy, Mr. Netanyahu is a war hero, and we expect him to finish the job. Finishing the job is ethnically cleansing Gaza, isn't it? I mean, doesn't that make us, the U.S., accessory to this illegal act?
I don't think Trump is smart enough to realize that when he says that, but I think it makes us absolutely an accessory, a proponent, a driver of this. Biden did nothing to stop the war from progressing. He fueled it. He gave moral, political support, and financial support. This war would not have happened without Biden's.
And unfortunately, we have a new administration criticizing what Biden did or didn't do, and it's following the same pattern. Yeah. With regards to where we are today in Gaza, there seems to be a widespread assumption that somehow everything was rosy and quiet in Gaza prior to October 7, as if basically by doing so, Hamas somehow started a conflict that didn't exist.
Yeah.
People are either not aware or do not care to know about, let's say, 2012, 2014. This is not the first war in Gaza, is it?
No. And that's a totally nonsensical position to take, that there wasn't a history behind this. I mean, I'll just speak from my own personal experience. There have been numerous wars. It's interesting, the Palestinians call them wars. And so we, in turn, sometimes call them wars. They're really not like equivalent opponents fighting each other. You have someone who is dominating and someone who is oppressed. And so let's just pick a few of them. Let's take 2008 and 9, for example. There were several before that, but 2008 and 9 was remarkable because it lasted, wait for it, 21 days, 21 consecutive days. That was unknown, that duration. I was in the home of Iyad el-Sarraj, who I'm sure you know of.
Very well, yes.
And I was stunned to see how upset he was. Very calm, mild-mannered psychiatrist, activist. And he was on edge. And he was saying things like, there could not be anything worse than this. It was so upsetting. 2014, just 5 years later, 51 days of nonstop bombardment, less strategically, but all over the strip, so no one felt like they were secure. Thousands died, hundreds of thousands displaced. And everyone said, this is as bad as it can get. People were even starting to talk about, I remember poignantly, kill me fast or kill me slow. I mean, kill me in this war if you need to. I'm dying anyway. Because the restrictions were so heavy. We're talking about restrictions on goods. We're talking about absence of potable water. We're talking about not being able to leave the strip. Total control of everyday life, which got worse and worse over the years. And so 8 and 9, 14, I'm going to leave many out, 21, I was actually there during that one, and right. So the simple fact is, easily documentable fact is that the Israeli military has bombarded Gaza multiple times over all of these decades, and life in on October 6th, 2023, the day before this attack happened, life was barely livable.
Yeah. So it's been more of a kind of, since 1967 with the occupation, it's been a continuous state of war, interrupted by a year here or a year there of quiet.
Yeah.
But more war probably rather than peace.
Yeah, certainly these very strong episodes which have done so much damage.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, look, thank you, Brian, for being with us today, for explaining to us a very unique, the human component, if you will, of the conflict in Gaza. Thank you for No Way But Forward, which is a very positive kind of look at this conflict, and appreciate you spending this time with us. Now, where can people get copies of the book?
The book is available online at Barnes & Noble, at Ingram, and Amazon.
Okay.
In e-version, paper, and hardback.
Excellent, excellent. Again, thank you, Brian, and thank you all for joining us today. And remember that you can listen to more episodes on our website or by subscribing to our podcast at Arab Center, Washington, D.C., where you can follow our work.
Thank you, Khalil.
Thank you.